looks like I finally beaten Pokemon Winds and Waves. Can't wait to see what the postgame has in store for me. What do you mean I have to pay $45.99 and I need to wait 6 months? Hey, what's good, yo? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. The grind and the hype train for Pokemon Winds and Waves does not stop. Just like every Pokemon title prior, we still have a lot to talk about in terms of this game, especially before they show off anything major that could throw off any of my predictions or guesses. Now, of course, we could definitely be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with this one here, but one thing that I really wanted to talk about was the post-game situation. I think it's more than fair to assume that a lot of us are a little tired about how post-game has been handled in games recently, not just in Pokemon, of course. One of the biggest reasons for this is probably simply the way games are developed nowadays. Once a game was released to the public back in the day, that was it. You played through that game, glitches and flaws and all, and you either enjoyed it or you didn't. Simple as that. But now that we live in the era of updates, I think that has played very heavily into how games are developed and released. Hell, a lot of games this era usually end up getting that general day one patch. So I think it's safe to say that we're more than past the point where games are being released unfinished. And in the case of Pokemon specifically, that is a major talking point. So you know the drill by now. Feet are up, check. Nice and relaxed, check. A nice steaming plate of raccoon burgers with a side of dill pickle fries, check. A cool glass of margarita. Would you look at that? Seems somebody was smart and they didn't bring any ice in here today. Check. Relax while we talk about the post-game situation in Pokemon Winds and Waves. So, if it wasn't obvious, at the very least, we want this base post-game for Pokemon Winds and Waves to be good. There is no doubt from anybody on this planet that once we receive Pokemon Winds and Waves, we're getting 2 different DLCs the summer and probably winter following. To be fair, this is only the 3rd major generation that we've hit since we've started utilizing home consoles as our main base of play, but I think it's more than fair to assume that since they've done this with Generation 8 and Generation 9, it only makes sense to do this with Generation 10 as well. That being said, Wind and Waves being our most likely holiday release for 2027 means that we're probably not getting any major updates or DLC or anything like that until the summer of 2028 and possibly the winter of 2028 following. And that most likely leaves us with a major gap of just whatever the game has to offer us. Now, the reason that I bring up post-game is because I can only imagine that you and I are both feeling the same way. That being, we have felt that these games have been very lackluster in terms of their post-game. Maybe we've all just grown up, maybe we're just tired of the same old thing, which is just hunting down all of the legendaries to fill out the Pokédex, but I think more so than lately ever, they have been super lacking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but before we got the DLC in Pokemon Sword and Shield, after you beat the story, the only thing that you were doing was raid battles with friends and hunting down shinies. Maybe my memory's failing me a bit, but I don't recall anything major in terms of the post-game. And I think that's the primary reason as to why so many people felt like the Sword and Shield DLC actually did some real good for that game. The game that felt like it was lacking in so many aspects gave us a major DLC update both during the summer and the winter that gave us something good to chew on. New biomes, a bunch of Pokemon returning, new legendaries to hunt. They even gave us that like raid battle minigame situation that felt like pretty much infinite content. Say what you will about Pokemon Sword and Shield, but I personally believe that the DLC added a lot of meat to it. But outside of that, the Swordbert and Shieldbert storyline was kind of whatever. And then you were kind of just left with the Battle Tower, which, cool. That's great. You know, I love me some Battle Tower stuff, but outside of that, it was just kind of lackluster. Like, we had the post-game, it just wasn't strong. It felt like a very similar situation to pretty much all of the games following. Okay, well maybe not all of them. I think that Pokemon Legends Arceus kind of sits in a weird, awkward limbo. Because the problem with that is that once you hit credits in that game, there's still technically more story to do. And the thing about that story is that it directly correlates to the main story. That post-game is what ties pretty much everything together. So like what, does that count as the true ending, or does it just simply count as post-game, which is optional stuff? Which, you know, technically everything's optional, but like, where does that leave Legends Arceus? I really don't know. And even then, that segment essentially just boils down to catch all the legendaries and finish your Pokédex. This time around though, you just get the actual plot of the game as opposed to just the shiny charm, you know? So it's like, if you want to count that as a post-game, then fine, whatever. But if you don't count that as a post-game, then what are you left with? You have the option to rebattle anybody that's remotely equivalent to that of a trainer in Jubilife Town over and over again. We eventually got that one update that gave us outbreaks, so you could hunt for shinies that way, but other than that, we weren't really operating with much. So for the most part, I guess it kind of varies person to person whether or not you want to count like the end of the story in that game as post-game or not. But after that, yeah, things are a lot more simplified. We got Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and once you beat that, before the DLC came out, all that we had access to was gym rebattles and 6-star Terra raids. And you know, that's cool, that's awesome that they actually gave us events to train up for and build up teams for so that we could be ready to fight these super hard Terra raids with our friends and things like that. But I'll be honest, Chief, I was pretty done with that after like the first 3. It was pretty much a rinse and repeat of figure out the meta, build that certain mon so it could be ready to stand against that one Pokemon, beat it that one time, and then you only get that Pokemon once. After that, it's just kind of reaping a couple of rewards here and there, and then that was it. Like, you wouldn't be able to shiny hunt that Pokemon or anything, so once you did it that one time, unless you wanted to just stack up a bunch of candies and stuff like that, you were pretty much good. But besides that, same old, same old. Finish your Pokédex and hunt the like 3 legendaries. Not really the strongest post-game situation there, right? And then there's debatably one of the biggest culprits, which is Legend ZA. Now, the battles against Lysander and Zygarde, pretty cool, they were alright, but the rest of it was just spamming the ZA Royale until you got some more story. I think you had to get like 15 or 25 tickets before you were able to finish the Tawny and Urbane storyline. And to be honest, the ending to that storyline in particular was a little bit on the lackluster side. And once you wrap that up, you were still likely doing the ZA Royale because you were wrapping up all of Mabel's quests so that you could get the Shiny Charm, because this is the easiest game to Shiny hunt in, hands down. So for the most part, we were left pretty underwhelmed waiting for the DLC to give us our inevitable real post-game. I don't think I need to tell you guys though that DLC obviously didn't really go over that well with everybody. Don't get me wrong, I did love the base game for Pokemon Legends ZA. It had a lot of new things that it brought to the table that I had a lot of fun with. But I'm not going to sit here and act like the base game was completely flawless, especially when it was repetitive as it is. It was pretty much a lot of rinse and repeat of the same situation over and over and over again. Which, you know, for RPGs is completely understandable, you go through something like this a lot, but in this case in particular, it was a lot more glaring. Which is why copying and pasting those philosophies and ideas for the DLC was probably not the way to go. So not only were people a little upset by the lack of post-game in the base game, but they were also left a little unsatisfied, or a lot unsatisfied, with the $30 DLC that they had to get afterwards. And then you glob that all together and you could see why people weren't all that satisfied with Legend ZA as a whole. So, pulling all that together, we look at Pokemon Winds and Waves with just a little bit of skepticism. We're worried about the big major issue that's likely going to affect Pokemon Winds and Waves, which is the fact that we're likely to get a super lackluster post-game because we're going to be waiting on DLC. Like I said earlier, one of the biggest things plaguing the gaming industry as a whole is the fact that they are willing to ship games before they are finished because they can justify that through updates later. One of the biggest issues with that though is the fact that they are willing to undercook a game, give us this base game, and then sell us what could essentially have been the rest of the game through DLC in a way. Now, don't get me wrong, it did feel like once upon a time there were games out there that did feel like they were finished and that DLC actually did feel like proper additional content. Completely new stories to delve into, new toys or weapons to play with. During the early stages of DLC, it felt like they had finished the games, saw how people were enjoying them online, and thought, oh hey, these could be really fun additions to our game that we could add later. But now it feels like we have gone the greedy route, and we've decided that instead of giving us fun additions to the game in the base game and adding on to stuff later after seeing what the general vibes of the game were with the people, they are intentionally developing things that could work and then withhold that content and save it so that we can pay for it later. I mean, hell, think back on early fighting games, right? There was a time where you would have to go out of your way to hunt down characters to unlock objectives that you would have to complete to get them. But now, no, they have simplified it. They have streamlined it. You don't have to work to get said characters. You just pay $5.99 or $6.99, or if they're selling them in a pack, like 20 something. Don't get me wrong, I love Smash Ultimate. It still has some of the most hours I've ever put into a game, but by God, it was the most insane decision to make it so that we were paying for these fighters passes without even knowing who the characters we were buying were. Like, yeah, it was always really fun to see the reveal for these characters and things like that, but thinking back to like Melee or Brawl when they couldn't just give us stuff through DLC, it was a much more intriguing time to find out randomly that you could unlock Jigglypuff or Wolf or something along those lines. So, circling back to Pokemon, yeah, it's kind of blatant to see that's exactly what they were doing. For the most recent generations, it's been a consistent mindset of, oh, don't worry about the post-game, you'll get that when you get the DLC. That's where the actual post-game comes in. I say that Pokemon Legends EA is easily the biggest culprit out of all of the games that we've received so far because of how soon after we received the DLC. Now, of course, you could absolutely make the argument that the DLC was good and well done because we had that extra year of waiting in 2024 and they were able to finish up the DLC so that we could get it pretty soon after Pokemon Legends EA released. And clearly there's mechanics that were built specifically for the DLC that couldn't really work if they overlapped with the base game. So in turn, it's very obvious that it was never meant to be part of the base game, it was always meant to be DLC. And that's good and dandy for the most part, but it's because of that mindset that they probably didn't really feel the need to build upon the base game's post-game. And I really do think that is a damn shame because Legends EA, because of its pricing, really hurt a lot of people's perspectives and perceptions when it comes to Pokemon. Because, at this point in time, it is technically the most expensive mainline Pokemon title. So them not doing everything in their power to deliver the most possibly complete package for the base game in of itself before even considering DLC is kind of unfortunate. And like I've been saying for the last couple of months here, I guarantee Pokemon Winds and Waves is going to be $80, easily the most expensive Pokemon game by far. Because if Pokemon Pokopia, a spin-off title at $70 is taking Switch 2s off the shelves, what do you think is going to happen with a mainline title like Winds and Waves, the game that people have been waiting for? And I'm telling you now, if that base game doesn't feel good and massive and complete for 80 whole smackaroons, it's gonna be a massive problem. Because man, people are quiet about it now, but once Mario Kart World receives that DLC and we realize that it's paid, oh my god, it's gonna be a bloodbath. And I really do believe with all of my heart that it's going to be the exact same situation with Winds and Waves. This time, the game's gonna be $80, and the DLC for it's probably gonna be $40 to $45. I'm not saying this because I want it to happen, obviously not. I'm the consumer. I don't want this stuff to be more expensive. I'm just saying this aloud because my expectations are low. Now that we've said it all aloud and you're thinking about it a little bit, what are some ways that we could potentially alleviate this potential situation? Well, to give you the short and simple, give us a post-game for Christ's sakes. Some of the best post-games are the ones that give a decent amount of replay value, something that keeps you coming back well after you've completed the main story. As much as the common person usually does love to go out of their way to complete the Pokédex or Shiny Hunt, All Reliable just ain't gonna cut it no more. Or, you know, at least not when it's gonna cost upward of like $160 to get both copies. But it really is simple. Just give us more things to do, more stuff to work towards, more stuff to build. Even though it was a bit of a downgrade in comparison to previous Battle Towers, we at least had one in Generation 8. Why did we not have one in Generation 9? Battle Towers were easily one of the best ways for a casual player to dip their toes into competitive and really get a better understanding of all of the more unique and deeper mechanics of Pokemon. And this is coming from a not really competitive player in Pokemon. I've dipped my toes in the Generation 8's Battle Tower, 7's Battle Tower, obviously 4's, and I would have for sure gone out of my way to play in 9's if it had one, but for some reason they just couldn't be bothered to do that. And that really sucks because with terrestrialization as a mechanic, I feel like that would have gone crazy, but it just didn't happen this time around, and I'm really hoping that's not the case for Generation 10, considering Battle Towers are kind of a big staple in a way. It was one of the best ways to grind out all of your competitive items. I don't know, maybe they didn't develop that in Scarlet and Violet because they already knew that Pokemon Champion was going to be a thing, but I don't know, it's been so long that I find that kind of a ridiculous aspect if that really is the case. But again, I would love to see something like the Battle Tower in Pokemon Winds and Waves. Hell, I have a whole slew of things that I would love to see in Winds and Waves. Maybe some kind of tournament situation. If anything, that's a perfectly fine replacement for Battle Towers. We could get a little bit more unique with it and have a tournament situation where you have all of the NPCs that you've come to know up to that point battle it out in a big Budokai style tournament. Why not? You could literally just copy it bar for bar how it worked in Pokemon Black and White or Black 2 and White 2 or whichever game that was in. People have been begging for contest halls to come back since Generation 4. The only reason we got it back back in the 2020s at all was because we got the Gen 4 remakes. That is it. But that used to be like a big major career thing in the world of Pokemon. Why did they ever get rid of that? Why have we not seen that again? That's insanity. There are so many ways you could work that into modern Pokemon games, it's not even funny. And hell, if you want to give us incentive to play it, you can make it so that we can earn cosmetics and stuff for our Pokemon through contests. Duh! I personally have been asking for a Pokeathlon type situation in the modern 3D titles so that we can have it so that our Pokemon are competing in sports against other people online or other NPCs or something along those lines, because why wouldn't Pokemon be able to participate in their own sports? That makes more than enough sense. Hell, I see that we're going underwater in Pokemon Winds and Waves. Why not have a situation in which we have mini games down there, like some kind of mining mini game or some kind of fun little hunting situation for treasure or whatever that could earn us something. There's so many ways you could go about this. It's really funny that Pokemon does tend to do a lot of like low-key nostalgia reaching, but when it comes to the games, they never tap into it there. Like, we're literally asking for so many mechanics to come back in so many different ways that could easily work in modern titles, and they just never do. Like, it is insanely ironic that we could get this like music box Game Boy thing that can play the original soundtrack for Pokemon Red and Blue, but we can't get battle towers or contests back in modern titles? Yeah, real strange. Regardless, to sum up what I just said, the games are going to be expensive as hell. Make it so that they're at least semi-worth it. That is all I'm asking, and one of the best ways to do that is make it so that the games have hella replayability. One of the best ways to do that is obviously to make it so that the base game has some really solid post-game while we wait for the DLC. And I think that's a pretty valid request, but hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one. Hopefully by the time that this video is edited and released, there will be some kind of response for you guys to respond to up on the community tab, and probably most likely for sure in the Discord as well, so that we could get some kind of response video going probably within this week or potentially for next week. But regardless, you'll see it when you see it, and you know, right now this is past Soul talking. He doesn't know what he might have come up with, so we'll play that by ear. And then maybe next video we'll probably either talk about the gimmick or we'll talk about online stuff, because I didn't really bring up the fact that raids are a major thing too, but I guess I kind of did in a way. But regardless, it's still not enough. Let's be so real. But regardless, I think I've said my piece, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic over in your direction, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Do you think that this next set of games needs some serious post game to justify its price, like me? Do you think that we could get some actual post game out of it if we were to get something back like Battle Tower, like tournaments, like contest halls and things like that to really help justify it? Or am I crazy? We've gotten perfectly fine post games in the last couple of titles, and I'm just out of my mind even bothering to ask for something like that. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, yeah, man, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
Stay funky, doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky, battle goes wherever I am. I stay funky, I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky, honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky, get the club popped off like pins.